Welcome back to the Peruvian Waltz podcast. We are now on episode 52, which I know is technically at the 1 year anniversary, but we've done 52 weeks, which is a year. So we're technically a year old, technically. So let's celebrate this anniversary with a good and not Groundhog Day win. But first, let's introduce our guests. First of all, Christopher Riscardo is back, which had a bit of a very busy few days, and almost to the point that he's forgotten about us. But unfortunately, thankfully, he hasn't. He's with us right now. So how are you, Viz?
Very well. No, I haven't forgotten about the Peruvian Waltz. I just happened to be busy getting engaged, so took a little bit of my time. But no, I mean we know that the beginning of the year can be kind of slow. It's winter in the west in the northern hemisphere, and at the same time it's summer in Lima, so that means that everybody's at the beach instead of talking about soccer. But looks like finally things are starting to pick up, and the league should be starting here pretty soon. So it was like, okay, yeah, let's get back into the groove of things.
Yes, we will. People can go to the beach all they want, get stuck in traffic on the way to Asia if they want. But I'm not one of those. So I'm not one for getting stuck in traffic to something I don't enjoy doing anyways. But it's a pretty hot summer here in Lima. I should introduce myself as well. It is a pretty hot summer here in Lima. The hottest in 2 years since we had those floods. Thankfully, it's not raining too much, so I don't think we'll have those floods again. But anyways, let's not draw that on with the introductions too much. Let's introduce our other panelist, Peter Galindo. How are you?
I am good. Thankful that it is no longer freezing, bloody cold outside, because I absolutely hate it. So, I can deal with a nice little 4 degrees in February. That is much more than acceptable for me.
Yeah, better than negative 40, which I have heard about that.
Yes, that was bad.
My friend is from Terrace, and he is apparently it's negative 29 there, which is much colder for BC standards. So
yes, very.
And Peter can know that because he's from Vancouver, actually. So
yes,
yeah. But yeah, like I said, let's not that on too much. Let's get straight into the Libertadores, which it's more exciting times for now, anyways, because Garcilaso did win the last game, but that was in the second leg, and they were got knocked out. It's been a while since we had a Peruvian win the first leg. Since Universitario was Cafeta, I think. My memory might be bad, but I think that was the last one. I think Viz can correct me on that. But anyways, it's a good win. Melgar were totally dominant as a brief summary, and they were deserved winners of the match. There's a few things I didn't like about it, but I'll get up to those when we get to it. First, let's hear some brief thoughts, as we always do from our panelists. So I'll let Peter go first.
Yeah, so it's funny because you look at just the stats after the game, and like, let's say you didn't watch the match in full and you just read the match report or you looked at the numbers afterwards, you would think, oh, this is a very even match. In fact, maybe you could even argue, Chile edged it in the end because they outshot Melgar 11-8. They had a penalty, but it was skied over the net. I think it was probably a little bit of an unfair call to begin with because the ball was deflected onto the hand, which I think is always a bit harsh to give, but that's neither here nor there. And also, Gabriel Torres missed a couple of sitters, one especially his first one that he just blasted over the net. But other than that, I think Melgar were actually quite fantastic in this game. They did generate 5 shots on target to Lau's 1, so there's that. And I think that especially for most of the first half and then the beginning of the second half, we saw Melgar really playing some free-flowing, exciting stuff. They were pressing high. They were really causing fits on the flanks for Lau. And especially, Viz's boy, Janio Posito, was actually causing a bit of a ruckus on the left side. Joel Sanchez as well was drifting all over the front line. Bernardo Cuesta was cutting inside to open up a lot of space, which I think was really integral to Melgar's attack. And Alexis Arias obviously gets the winning goal. That's huge. I thought he actually had a pretty mediocre first half by his standards in terms of just his distribution and whatnot. But beginning of the second half and then up until he came off, which I thought was a bit surprising, he was amazing and totally deserved that goal. And I'm glad that it was him who actually won the game for Melgar because this could actually be a very big season for him. I'm sure we'll get into that when we talk about the Descentralizado preview. But the only real negative I can pick from this is just I don't understand why Pautaso would withdraw Arias and Vidales when the attack was thriving and when they were really getting at Lau as much as they were. Potentially it's to conserve their legs because it's early in the season. He doesn't want to overrun them. That's fair enough. But at the same time, also, why then pin your team all the way back when you were having so much success pressing Lau and winning the ball up high and getting chances on goal? It made no sense. In the end, it worked, and they got the clean sheet, which is huge, but that could be something to watch for if Melgar is ahead and are defending a slender lead.
Well, yes, I agree with, first of all, I agree with Alexis Arias, which I also thought the first half he looked a little bit sloppy. But the second half, he was very good. Although I will say this isn't one of his long ball games. Like, he was very good on the ground today rather than area with his aerial balls. I think that was where he thrived today. Which is he's usually an all-round complete midfielder, but today he was mostly an on-the-ground player. Kind of reminded me of Cueva a little bit, but this is an exception because he's obviously nothing like Cueva. So I think that was a good game. For me, Narvaez really showed today why he was called up for Ecuador, because he was once again fantastic, and it showed that it's not just in Peru where he really thrived. So Narvaez is a real gem that Melgar have, and I hope he can stay for a few more years. One other thing is Mifflin. I was a bit skeptical about him starting, and while he wasn't outstanding, he was much better on the left than Nilson Loyola. So Nilson Loyola was definitely not a miss in those two in that game. All the respect to him, but he was definitely one of Melgar's biggest weak points. Past Libertadores. So overall, I think that this is Melgar's best performance since in the Libertadores since 2015, or maybe in its history actually, because I remember in the 1980s he didn't do anything either. But I wouldn't know. I wasn't alive back then. But Melgar were very good. It was either between this or the Emelec game that they played a few years ago, but I think this one edges it because here they look. In the Emelec game, I remember that being quite dull and both teams having a go. Besides, Emelec were with 10 men for most of the match, whereas this game they really rattled Chile, if you want to put it that way. So I think that this is. I agree with Peter that I think Pautaso made a mistake that instead of going 2-0, he risked going back, which is also a risk. It's just being offensive and keeping the ball away from the net. It's just as risky as keeping the ball back and letting your opponent have the ball, because they can just shoot a long shot, get lucky, and it goes in. So it's just as risky in my opinion. And I would guess that the defenders who didn't look at their best all game, I mean, at least positioning wise, didn't look at their best. But I would say that they were probably getting a little tired, so that was part of the explanation. That's the only thing I can think of. So, Viz, what do you think of this game? What would you say? What would you sum it up as?
Well, I was in the middle of class, so I didn't really get a chance to get too much into the game. Some very rough impressions that I did get is that even though the Melgar win, it felt like a bit of an agony at parts of the game in which you could honestly tell that they did get lucky, and that equalizer, in my opinion, could have come at any point. There's obviously the penalty. There's also, it seems to me like a very unusual number of shots that were just off target or were deflected by the crossbar or one of the posts. I think that it is good for Melgar to win. It's going to be good for them to go with a winning attitude to Chile. I think that we still need to be careful with this second leg. And other than that, I did see that, in my opinion, Cáceres did have a pretty good night also, and that also helped a lot to not only have a good attack up front, but also have something pretty solid, in my opinion, in the defense too. So overall, pretty decent game. Like I said, I didn't really watch it in detail too much, so I'm gonna abstain from trying to make any tactical comments. But those were probably my overall impressions of the Melgar de Chile game.
Okay, so I just want to say something quickly. So for those who have been seeing the live tweets, I have accidentally sent 2 live tweets already on my personal account. So I'm just gonna leave them be and retweet them on the Peruvian Waltz account and then tweet the rest on this account. I just wanted to get that out of the way. The only reason I'm not deleting it is because I got a retweet, so I don't want to delete that. I want people to see it. But anyways, okay. So other topics to discuss. I guess we can discuss the strong spots from Melgar. First of all, like I said, this is Melgar's best performance in the Libertadores I've seen probably ever. But of course, it all depends on the second leg. I mean, if they lose, and it will all be irrelevant. So, before we go to the second leg, I guess we'll talk about some of the pieces of Melgar. Christopher always mentioned Casada, which I guess he did have a good game. He was untested, but I can never trust Casada. You all know this. Like, if he's so error prone that I'm not really sure if he's even having a good game, if he's untested or not. But yeah, he did look confident in goal, but you never know with him. And yeah, Vidales was very.
By the way, sorry to cut you off, but Ray Sandoval scored.
Oh yes, I forgot. I was actually going to say that myself, but I slipped my mind. Yes. So Ray Sandoval is saving himself in the Mexican Premier Division by doing nothing but showing up and scoring a goal, as always, as he always has done. So yeah. Anyways, like I was saying, I definitely think that this is a very good performance from Melgar. Pautasso definitely surprised me. I was worried it was going to be another Pablo Abram, but Pautasso is I guess Martinista, not a San Paulista, which is different. And no, I like what I saw. I think Melgar are going to be better at Cristal this season, which we'll get on to later because Cristal are in a bit of a rut right now. But I think that Melgar is definitely looking good now. As for the second leg, some people say 1-0 is not going to be enough, and you know what? It may not be, but Peruvian winning the first leg 1-0 at home and getting a clean sheet, you don't see that every day. You know what? I'll take what we can get. I will take it, and just hope the second leg is the best we can go for. We and Chile are going to go out for the kill, I think. So maybe if we hit them on the counter, we can actually get one of the goals. So yeah, what do you guys think? I'll let Christopher go first.
Can you? I don't think I understood what exactly you were going at. Do you want to let Peter go first, or you want to repeat that?
I was just asking what you think of the second leg.
Oh, well, yeah. Like I said a second ago, we know that La Copa Libertadores is not something that is easy for any Peruvian. I think that Melgar has proven itself at home. I think a 1-0 lead is good. If they could have increased that lead, that would have been great. But obviously, they like I said a second ago, they still need to be careful for the second leg. Going to play in Chile is not that easy, as we know. Luckily, it's not going to be altitude at all for them. UD Chile is sea level, as most places in Chile are, so that's not going to be an unfair advantage. And yeah, as long as they can maybe score one away, or even and keep themselves from getting scored on, then yeah, I think that they would have some decent possibilities of going on to the next round.
Well, before I let Peter go on, there's one more thing I wanted to say. I'm not sure how much of this overhaul the Chile has had, but it looks like to me they're going through a bit of a transition period, which is why the Chileans must have been so pessimistic for their team. I mean, they just lost Soteldo, and a lot of these players, maybe Barbosa, I don't know how long Angelo Gutierrez has been there, but it seems to me Kudelka is still trying to find the squad, whereas Melgar seems to keep a similar core to last year. So I think that's definitely an advantage for Melgar in some ways. So yeah, Peter, what do you think?
Well, I think the key to Melgar getting the desired results to then advance, it all lies, I think, in the midfield, because even when Lau were able to kind of bypass Melgar's pressing in the defensive third, in Lau's defensive third, you still saw Freitas and Arias getting back very quickly and closing down that space, which I think was massive, because there were times when I was looking at Lau breaking forward through the middle and thinking, oh my God, they're going to have a ton of space here to exploit. And then all of a sudden, boom, there was Freitas or Arias breaking up the oncoming attack. So I think if they can do that and then replicate kind of similarly in terms of their pressing and doubling up the flanks, they should be fine. and should be able to get, you imagine at least a draw. Like I said when I was giving my thoughts on the game in general, the clean sheet is huge. If they had conceded, even if they won 2-1, the odds of them getting eliminated go up significantly, because even if, let's say, they concede, then okay, you're still alive even if you lose 1-0, which is obviously ideal. So that for me is massive. They can maybe take a little bit more of a cautious approach because of the fact they kept the clean sheet, as opposed to, let's say, they had conceded a late equalizer, the penalty went in, and then Melgar scores to make it 2-1. It would have been a bit of a different story. So that's massive.
Honestly, I don't think that Chile is going to roll Melgar over next match. I mean, I think they'll probably get a win, like a narrow one. I'm feeling a bit optimistic, so I'll probably say 2-1 or a 1-0. But I definitely don't think it's going to be they're going to roll them over, because, I mean, the Chilean league, it's really not that good. I mean, if it was an Ecuadorian team, yes, I'll be biting my nails because they always seem to get the best of us. But if there's anyone that are the biggest bottlers as the Peruvian side, is the Chileans, because the Chileans, you can see there's talent in the squad, but they don't seem to get it right. And I've seen them lose against Venezuelan sides, Bolivian sides, even some Peruvian sides like Huancayo last year, who beat Unión Española. Mm-hmm. So the Chileans are bad as us when it comes to that department, and they don't have the highest work rate either. Today, with the Chile, they show a lot of work rate. So,
Brian, on that subject about the fact that Unión Española lost to Huancayo last year, interestingly enough, U de Chile suffered their first loss to a Peruvian opponent in the Copa Libertadores for the first time since 1981. So that just kind of goes to show you how, well, first of all, historic that achievement is, but also I think the fact that Bautazo is probably going to have more confidence from his squad as well as the fans, because I'm sure that's going to be something they're going to savor, getting one over a big Chilean club.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, well, I think we can close that off. We can close the Libertadores part off because I want the Primera División preview is going to take a little while, and there's also another topic I kind of want to get into if we have some time at the very end. So yeah, let's talk about the Primera División preview, which is probably going to take up most of the part today. And yeah, I guess it's going to be a little easier to tell because we've gotten a glimpse of a few of the teams already. Let's start with the relegation battle, I guess. So okay, so I'm gonna just make a prediction. There's like 3 teams that are going to be mixed in the relegation battle. Without even thinking, Pirata won. They're definitely the favorites to go down. And I'm not saying that because I don't like them. I'm saying that because many reasons, and I'll get into those in a few minutes. But other options, I think Sport Boys are kind of in trouble as well, because Sport Boys, they haven't reinforced very well. I mean, they've had some very dodgy signings. I mean, Sprout could be a good player. The Argentine, I think, is a midfielder, because Peruvian clubs have bought from 3rd division. Argentine clubs before that have done well. Like, I think Manicero came from the 3rd division of Argentina. I think Cuesta came from the 3rd division of Argentina. So I'm not reading too much into that signing. I'm talking more about signings like Falconi, who came from the amateur leagues in Ecuador. That just doesn't make any sense to me. And yeah, I get that they want to play youth, and they have Echeves. They have Echeves players now, anyways. But I suppose Laud tried that last year. It didn't work out too well for them. So as much as I don't want them to go down, I think Boys are going to be the other team that's going to get relegated this season. So it's going to be Boys and Pirata for me. And the 3rd team is going to be sucked into the fight, UTC, whose signings have just not impressed me at all. They've lost a lot of key players. The only reason they're going to stay up is we have to have a good manager. Definitely a manager I rate more than Segarra and whoever the hell Boys' manager is now. I'm not even sure who he is, to be honest. That says a lot about them, I think. So, Peter, who do you think is going to get stuck in the relegation battle this year?
Well, I think we're all going to go clean across the board and say that Molinos El Pirata are probably going to be the one automatic team to go down. I mean, just off the top of our head, they didn't really make any marquee signings. And, I mean, just the way they've kind of operated between getting promoted and up to now, it's just not been great, especially when you compare them to the other 2 promoted teams from Trujillo. But in terms of the second team, I wouldn't be surprised if Binacional somehow ended up down there. I know they overachieved last year, but they had a lot of problems paying players. But keep in mind that they were promoted straight from Copa Peru in the 1st division. Now that players have started to leave and the fact that that kind of allure has weared off, maybe then they kind of capitulate a little bit and end up getting sucked into that relegation fight and then end up going down, because I'm sure this is a pretty common trend. Typically speaking, when a club doesn't pay its players, it's going to be a continuous thing. And therefore, it's going to weigh on the minds of those players, and they're just going to lose all motivation. Look at Sport Rosario last year as a perfect example.
All right, and Christopher, what do you think? What will you see your three candidates for the relegation battle is?
I think that I would agree. Obviously, I think number one is Piratas for sure. As to the other one, I think that it's probably going to be between three teams. I can see Ayacucho struggling this year. I can see Sport Boys struggling also. And like Peter said, actually, he beat me to it. But I think that Binacional could also be a team that is a candidate for relegation, considering not only that they have been suffering, that they finished last year like suffering. Honestly, I mean the players hadn't been paid for a long time, but for some strange reason, instead of thinking about the team, it feels like the owners of the team are thinking mostly about going back to Puno, right? And I think that there's a political aspect to it all, right? And it's the taking professional division soccer Puno. As we know, they're going to be playing in Juliaca this year, and that is not easy to get used to. Not only for the visiting team, but also for the home players, unless they've had a pretty good preparation. Juliaca and Puno is not the nicest region of the country to try to have professional soccer.
Well, yes, definitely. That will be the Binacional saving point. But if administration comes to the fact, then it really won't matter in the end. If they don't have quality, if their quality goes away, if they lose points, it's not going to matter much, regardless of how strong the altitude is. I mean, I know Guadalajara's altitude isn't as strong as Juliaca, not even close, but I mean, you shouldn't lose 8-0 to Cristal in the altitude. And that's the kind of the administration errors I'm going into. It's burning out young players and whatnot, and then losing and then signing a bunch of local Copa Peru players. This won't work. But I personally don't think Binacional are going to struggle that much. I think they're going to finish somewhere around mid-table. If they get their act together and learn from Sport Rosario's mistakes, then I think they can have another decent year. They've got a few decent players. What I don't doubt is they'll have a strong start, and then they'll start falling a little bit. And it really depends on how far they fall when it comes to their administration. So I think that's what it's going to come down to. Now, I'm thinking of another team I think could be some of the relegation battles is Cesar Vallejo. Now, Cesar Vallejo are obviously a club I don't want to go down because I think they offer a lot to Peruvian football. But I've not been that impressed with their signings myself, and I think that they're kind of a transitional team. They want to stay up and they want to build for the future. But I think the first year is going to cost them a little bit. So I think they'll stay up. I think they'll get back to fighting for honors again in Peru. So I think that is I think it's kind of a risky move, but if it pays off, it can work really well. So yeah, that's what I think of them. And now we move to mid-table. So mid-table is kind of a tough one, but if I have to pick 4 teams to finish between to finish below the top 10, but not exactly relegated, not exactly in a relegation battle either, I'd say Manucci, Comercio, and who's the last team? And San Martin, Encantolado as well. Because those 2 teams are like eternally mid-table sides. So I think that those are the 4 teams. Yeah, okay, I'll go about that. And what do you guys think?
I would agree with Cantolao and San Martin. I mean, that's what they do every year. And it seems like every time you think, oh, they lost some key players and they're therefore going to take a step back. They never do because they find some diamond in the rough. They end up being great and then the cycle repeats itself, which is exactly what they do so well. And I think that the Peruvian footballing pyramid is very thankful for that. In terms of the other teams, I mean, I don't want to make as bold of a take this year because of what happened with Sport Boys a year ago, but I will say this. The Trujillano sides, I think, are going to do very, very well this year. They could finish upper mid-table at most, but I'm going to be conservative and say that they still kind of get into that like lower to upper mid-table range because even though they do have history behind them, especially Cesar Vallejo,
Manucci
Manucci as well, but Cesar Vallejo, I think maybe a little more finances behind them. I don't know. But either way,
yes.
Yeah. So I think because of that, they're going to be fine. But I feel like initially, since they've had a little bit of turnover, they've had to sort of readjust their mindset and whatnot, adjusting to the Peruvian first division. They're going to maybe start out a little bit slowly, but I think they'll eventually gain steam later on in the Apertura, possibly. But I do love some of their signings. I mean, if you look at Manucci, especially via Marin, I know Brian's a huge fan. Mario Tajima, Tulio Echemaite. And then, of course, the Pedro Diaz show is coming to the Primera División this year, which I know Brian is very excited about. And maybe, who knows, he gets on Gareca's radar if he really, really shines. So that could be a storyline to watch if you are a national team fan. That could be the goalkeeper of the future for Peru. And then for Cesar Vallejo, interesting to me that they went to Peru's big three for their marquee signings, more marquee signings anyways. Obviously, Super Mantequilla, Raul Fernandez is the one major signing I think that everybody looks at and thinks, oh, wow, that's pretty huge. I believe they also got Santiago Silva, forward, who should be able to help them get a few more goals. So I think because of that, they'll probably consolidate at least a lower mid-table spot.
Well, if just to know, guys, and that goes to you, Peter, as well. This is not the Santiago Silva. This is the other one. The one who plays for Pakistan. Yeah. Just making sure we have that clear. This is not the Santiago Silva. Wait, this Santiago Silva is kind of an on and off player. Like, he was very good in his first few years in Peru. Then Cristani was terrible, and then America and Cali, I think he was helpful. I don't know if he was good, but I think he was helpful. So this could prove to be a very good signing for Cesar Vallejo. We'll see which version of Santiago Silva we see. Christopher, what would you say your mid-table teams are?
I think I'm going to go with some of the usuals, right? Like we already said, Comercio, Unión Comercio, and San Martín, eternal mid-tablers. Same thing with Cantolao. I think those three are mid-tablers for sure. I also think that Alianza Universidad, I can totally see them kind of in that mid-table range.
Yeah.
They had some decent signings. They have been preparing themselves from early on, which to me is a sign that I don't think they're going to be fighting relegation. They seem to be very happy, very animated to be back in the first division after some 20-something years. But I don't see them outperforming the rest of the teams. We have to realize that we now have 18 teams, so we're going to have a little bit wider of a mid-table, right? Honestly, 18 for a country like Peru, it feels like a lot of those teams are basically going to become fillers. So other than Alianza Universidad, I don't know. Maybe UTC, honestly. I say mostly because I haven't heard a lot from UTC since the beginning of the year. Last year they had kind of a slow start. Then they made it to Copa Sudamericana in the end. But I haven't really heard much from them, and I don't know what their signings are going to be like or what their signings have been like. And so I'm kind of tend to group them with that mid-table group. Maybe a little bit closer to the Sudamericana spots than not.
All right, so we actually got a comment in the chat. It's actually been a while since we got a comment in the chat, but Mr. Raul, he said too many teams. Peru League should have 12 tops. I think that's a topic for another time, but I don't think that I definitely agree that 18 is too many, but I also think 12 is too little. So we'll definitely have that another time. Maybe in a special podcast, which we should really get cracking on that, but we'll discuss that in later on. So yeah, I think I actually forgot to say Alianza Universidad. I think if I had to pick a 15 about the mid-tables, I think Alianza Universidad will be my 15. I'm kind of torn on them between top half and mid-table because I feel like they're going to be that Copa Peru team that qualifies for Sudamericana, but I also think they're lacking some quality to qualify for the Sudamericana. But I also think that they're a little bit too good to fight relegation, especially after signing Víctor Rosell, who I'm not sure if Bugado is training. If he isn't, then I think that's good. That's a good thing ultimately for Alianza Universidad because he's really declined in the last few years. But Víctor Rosell, as a rude of a person he can be, like the Peruvian Joey Barton, I think that he's a good player personally. So yeah, Robinson Aponsa as well, Christopher's favorite player, and I think this should be pretty good. I think they should be pretty good. I don't think they're going to be great, but I think they'll do. I think they'll surprise a few people. So, and it's not just on Edson Universidad that sees the Peruvian again. It's Guanaco in general. So it's nice to see a good plaza like that back in the Primera. Anyways,
three players that I hope you will never mention again: Aponza, Deza, and Calera. Don't want to hear you talk about either one of those ever again. Okay? They're dead to me.
Oh, Peter, I apologize for getting off topic here, but I just want to say that Calero is part of that great Colo-Colo team, that Vidal, Isla, Sanchez, so many good team.
Yep.
I just wanted to mention that to wind up Christopher.
Man. One thing on Alianza Universidad, because I mean, this is shameful of me, but I didn't forget them until Viz brought them up. But must be said, at the time when they made these signings, signing Neca and getting Julio Landaudi, that was massive.
Yes.
For me, because like you look at Alianza Universidad, they're coming straight up from Copa Peru. They get players of that quality, like that is a coup for them. Like, honestly, congratulations to them. That alone will probably have them possibly finishing in the top half.
And not only that, but like Alianza Universidad are a team with some money. Alianza Universidad are a team with some money, so I don't think they'll have too many administration problems. So I think that's one thing to look forward to, where we see a Peruvian team that's actually going to pay their players, or I assume they will anyways, because Alianza Universidad do have the money, from what I'd say. And they're a relatively big club. I think they're Guanaco's oldest club, actually. Christopher, you can correct me on that. Okay. So, I guess he's not going to correct me on it.
He's just like, nope.
Okay, so, let's go to the top half. The top half and the Sudamericana as well, I guess. Okay, so top half of Sudamericana. Is it 4-8 to qualify for Sudamericana? I think it is. So I guess this is Sudamericana, basically. Now, I might miss a few teams when I talk about this, but I think that Sudamericana, I think that, first of all, Ayacucho is going to fight it. I kind of disagree with Christopher earlier on that he's going to fight relegation. I think Ayacucho have reinforced themselves well. They got Luis Trujillo, who is a good fullback for that level, for the type of player that Ayacucho needs. They got Carlos Preciado, who's one of the most underrated forwards in the league. Even at Alianza, I thought he was actually quite good. And I'm trying to remember who else they got. They got Exa Rosales, who is the Peruvian penalty taker as a goalkeeper. He's a decent keeper. He's not great, but he's good enough again. So Ayacucho is a team, and of course, they have the altitude and that horrible pitch they play on. So I think that they have a good chance of qualifying for the Sudamericana this time. I'm not totally convinced they'll do it, but I think they'll definitely fight for it. So as for the other teams, Municipal is definitely going to be in that Sudamericana spot. I think that they can even push for a Libertadores spot, actually. I don't think they're as bad as the situation is as bad as people make out. They always got Arevalo Rios, who I'm not sure if he's going to be another Vargas, which I don't think he will, to be honest. I think he's going to do fine. His work rate and lack of legs might be a problem, but in Peru, you don't really need that because work rate in this league is so low anyways. So I think that Arevalo Rios is a good signing. Bogado is an excellent signing. Bulos is finally going to get a full season back at Municipal. And it's a very – and Rivadeneira is still there. Vilches is still there. Sela is still there. It's not as bad a squad. The only weak part of the team is really the right back. Without Cuba, it would suffer a little bit. And if it wasn't Cuba playing, if he was playing as a winger, then it's Salazar. So I think that's the only part that are going to really suffer. But otherwise, Rabanal is not even that bad. So I think Municipal are going to fight for a Libertadores spot. But I think they'll come short and finish in the Sudamericana. Now, I think as much as I love Grioni, I think Sport Huancayo is also going to be in Sudamericana because I think just one player short of that squad that they need to fight for a Libertadores spot. I think they're one player short. They've kept a lot of their players. They've got a few players. I actually don't even remember who they signed, to be honest. I probably should have seen that before I started the pod. But I heard what I can say is I heard they were going to sign Manicero, and they never did it. If they signed Manicero, that was the attacking player that they needed. And I just remember the two players. It was Liebman and something Fernandez. I just remember them. So you got some good. You have a good goalkeeper. You have someone who could do a job up front, but he's never going to consistently score that many goals. But he's still going to score goals. I think that's good enough. But I do think they needed one more player to really fight for Libertadores spot. One more attacking player. And lastly, the last spot is I'm trying to remember who I haven't. Oh yes. I think the last Sudamericana spot is going to be La U. I think they've reinforced quite well actually. Not enough for a Libertadores spot, but I think they're on good track to make up for the disaster that was last year. So I think that they're definitely getting there. So I think that they're going to be. I think that the Bruce-based club is definitely going to be back in the South American spotlight in 2020, just not the Libertadores. So what do you guys think? I'll let Peter go first.
Yeah, I agree with you on Municipal. I can't wait to see Burlos and Bogado together. That's going to be exceptional. And Riva Mineta, I mean, he's a sublime goalkeeper, probably the best goalkeeper in the league. Although him and Pedro Diaz, Brian, who knows? Maybe you'll change your mind a little bit. But anyways, Huancayo I agree with. I think that the defense, because they lost Cortleque and Colombo as well, that's going to be a bit of a big loss for them. And I think initially they're going to really struggle with that. And if anything, that'll be their Achilles heel. But I still think they have the attacking quality to be able to consolidate a Sudamericana spot. Lau, same thing. They kind of went through a bit of turnover. You have to wonder what happens with Cordova, because he comes in an impossible situation, keeps them up. They almost get into the Sudamericana, but now the pressure is going to be even higher this year. So can he handle that? That's one question. Alfajeme comes in to the heart of midfield. I think that's a bit of an upgrade for them, but again, how quickly does he adjust? Alejandro Holberg as well. Gary Correa. It's when you make a lot of signings like that, it could either go really well for you or really, really poorly. But I think that they did select well in terms of the areas they needed to reinforce. So I think that they should be good enough to make a Sudamericana place. And they certainly won't start out as slowly as they did last year, certainly. And then I'm going to go for a bit of a hot take. Why not? But Real Garcilaso, I think, will be the team that just misses out on Libertadores, because Hector Tapia, I mean, I liked the hire. I just don't think he really knows at this moment how he wants the team to play. And I think that's a massive problem. I will say Pablo Miguez looks like a very tidy signing. He looked amazing in the Libertadores matches against La Guaira, which I think is an area that Garcilaso really struggled in a year ago. But the key for them is show patience with the manager. If they do it, they can properly contend for the Libertadores. But I think because Tapia is kind of stuck in this precarious position of, do I want to play this way or that way, that's going to make the difference for them missing out on Libertadores and finishing in a Sudamericana place.
All right, Christopher, what do you think? Do you agree with those?
I'm going to go with Municipal. Like we said, I think that the reasons you guys already mentioned are valid. After Municipal, I'm probably going to go with Universitario. I think they were very well prepared this year. They seem to be recuperating from what's happened. Okay, Mike, I'm gonna say this because of the news of this morning, which I might not be thinking it quite through, and also because it is an odd number year, not an even number year. Then I think that Cristal might actually be joining the Sudamericana group. As we know, their coach left them today. Honestly, he seemed very sketchy from the beginning. Not really quite, seem to fill the shoes that Salas left behind last year. So we'll see how they do, because I think that, first of all, they need to get themselves a new coach as soon as possible, right? And Sporting Cristal can be somewhat picky about their coaches. I mean, and good for them. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. But between trying to figure out, a new coach, also the fact that they need to be fighting in Libertadores, which means that they're probably not going to be able to pay attention to the tournament as much, and considering that also the tournament is actually going to be shorter this year than it has been in previous years because of the Copa Bicentenario, I can potentially see Cristal kind of ending up in, right before Libertadores, on like that fifth or sixth spot, not quite hitting the mark. Now, with that said, I guess maybe my last team, I think I'm going to go with a double surprise here. I think I'm going to say Manucci. Why Manucci? I don't know. I think that's just kind of a gut feeling. I'm honestly just making a prediction that I'm probably going to be regretting, like Peter with Sport Boys.
All right. So before we move on to the Libertadores, well, actually, let's move on to the Libertadores. I lost my train of thought for a second, so I just said whatever. So, yeah, the Libertadores spots, I'm going to be a bit boring, and I think it's going to be the same four as the last year. Now, I think, personally, Alianza are going to win the league. They have the best squad. They have the best manager in the league. I think it's absolutely no doubt for me that Alianza are going to not even just win the league, but absolutely walk it as well. So I think that Alianza is definitely the team that's going to win it this year. I think Melgar, after what they showed today, they lost depth, like I said, but they actually have a game plan this time, which is something they've lacked since the Reynoso days. So I think that Melgar are going to finish second in the obviously accumulated table. And then third and fourth is going to be disputed between Cristal and Garcilaso. Now, Cristal is an interesting case, or I'll talk about Garcilaso first because Cristal is a little more complex. But Garcilaso, they have some good players, but I think with the moment they got rid of Mian, they lost a lot of playmaking abilities. And I don't agree with any of the acts they did before the Libertadores, where they hired a bunch of players and then there was apparently false contracts. I'm not on board with any of what they did, but none of those players are really that quality anyway. So, but Mian was the one that was really standout. So I think that losing him is actually going to hurt the team a lot. So yeah, I think Ramu is good and all, and I like Ramu, but he's mostly useful for home games. He's not much of a grounded player, from what I would see, and it really showed in the La Guaira game as well in Venezuela. So yeah, that's what I think. And as for Cristal is in a bit of a rut, like I mentioned at the beginning of the pod, and like Christopher just said, I definitely think that them finishing the Sudamericana is very plausible. But the reason I think they're going to finish in the Libertadores is they just have too much quality on their hands. Apparently, Omar Fernandez is actually going to Cristal, so that's going to be a big signing. Before there was these rumors about Omar Fernandez before, but they were false. Now that Reynoso is not at Puebla anymore, apparently Fernandez is going to follow suit, and he's going to go to Cristal. That's the rumor. And Fernandez and Herrera, I want to see that again. I will pay my money to see that again. So. The only weak point of Cristal is really the defense. I think that Merlo is really the only good defender they have, and everything else did not really. Cristal never do too much transfer business, anyways. But this season, it looks like it might actually hurt them. But like I said, I think they have a little bit too much quality for them to miss out. So that's why I think I'm going to put them in the top four. Peter, what do you say is the top four?
Okay, so one quick change. I'm going to retract Garcilaso finishing in Sudamericana. I'll take them out. I'll replace them with UTC. I think UTC is going to overachieve again because Navarro is a terrific coach. I completely forgot about them.
Actually, it's not because you think Navarro's a terrific coach. It's because you forgot UTC existed.
Yes, well, that's exactly it. So that's actually true. So I'll put them in there. I'll have them finishing like 8th. So Garcilaso gets spot. So yes, so Garcilaso gets them in. Gets in 4th for the reasons that I mentioned. I think they're going to kind of struggle with that identity a little bit. I'll put Cristal, I guess, 3rd because of all the reasons we've mentioned. We actually have a question on Cristal and their coaching situation, which we can get onto later. But that's obviously going to be the elephant in the room for them. But I do love the business they made. Keeping Merlo and Herrera was huge. I thought for sure both of them would be gone, and they ended up sticking around. And then, of course, bringing in Canchita. If Omar Fernandez comes in, that's massive. Patricio Arce was a very necessary signing for an aging midfield. I think that could be a huge difference for them. Yes, the defense still has holes at fullback, and obviously Merlo is really the only reliable defender they have, but it didn't hurt them last year. Obviously, much different situation because Mario Salas was a different level. But I don't know. I feel like with the midfield they have, with the addition of Arce and those attacking weapons, they should be fine. Melgar, I do like the look of them. Baltaso should be him, and I feel like Russo are going to be like the cream of the crop in terms of coaches in Peru. And as a result, I think will be the difference between them finishing in the top 2 and not finishing in the top 2. But I'll put Melgar as the runners-up because I still kind of worry about them a little bit at fullback. And that, I think, could be a real weak spot. And then Alianza, I think, wins the league because, frankly, they have the strongest squad, as Brian mentioned. There really aren't a lot of weaknesses other than maybe center back. But when you got Gaese and Butron back there, it might not make too much of a difference. And keeping Quevedo and Fuentes, which, I mean, assuming Quevedo doesn't go to Barcelona and Ecuador before the summer, that could also be, and the old cliche, like new signings. So that'll be beneficial for them, I'm sure, and obviously a full season of Mauricio Afonso as well, which will probably help. So yeah, that would be my top four from fourth to first.
All right, Christopher, what would you say?
So I agree with Alianza, Real Garcilaso, and Melgar. I also see Alianza winning the league this year, and I can also see them fighting a close battle with Melgar for the league. So probably Alianza number one, Melgar number two. I already said that I think that Sporting Cristal is probably going to finish in Sudamericana. I can see Real Garcilaso finishing third. And for that fourth spot, I'm gonna throw in another gut one in there and probably say Sport Huancayo. Sport Huancayo.
I would love that. I would love that. I certainly hope you're right.
Of course, Brian loves the fact that Grioni could finish in the Libertadores places, and then the Grioni for Peru train will start back up again.
Well, okay, before we go to the question, let's go to the question first because this kind of relates to the next topic I want to talk about. So let's get that out of the way.
All right. So Abel Gamarra at Abelanda81 and a proud Sporting Cristal fan asking us, should Sporting Cristal look within Peru for a coach, or should they try their luck again with a coach from outside the country? And he adds, please no Reynoso, I can't deal with that again. So I'll throw it out to you, Brian. What do you think? Should they look within Peru or outside of Peru?
Well, to be honest, I don't think they really have the time to look outside of Peru because looking outside Peru really takes time. And especially with how picky you are, like it's really just like pulling someone out of the grass. So, or the hat, better said. So I think that I think that that's not really going to work. But the problem is there's not really very many options in Peru either. I mean, excuse me for saying this, but if someone gave me the idea, you can always go for Grioni. I mean, he was
Oh, jeez. No, not Grioni.
Oh, my God. Could you imagine Grioni at Cristal? My God.
He's a really realistic option. But no, I personally not who I think they should go for. But I think they're going to end with Julio Cesar Uribe. I don't think he's a good manager at all. I don't think he's a good manager at all. But I think that's who they're going to end up with because Julio Cesar Uribe is a Cristal fan, and he's a Cristal idolo, I guess you could say. And he has a managerial resume. I mean, if Alexis Mendoza gets a Cristal with a non-existent resume, why not Cesar Uribe? So I don't think he should be the manager. I don't think he's a great manager. But I think he's going to be the one that they pick because it's kind of an emergency option at the moment, and I don't think Cristal really want him either. But I feel like they might feel like they don't have a choice. They might feel like he's the least worst option there is. Yeah. So that's what I think they're going to end up with. Christopher, what do you think?
So we can always call Mosquera back from Bolivia.
Well, actually, hold that thought. I want to say the thing I wanted to say was actually about Mosquera, but go on, Christopher.
Okay. Also, Daniel Admet could have a second spell at Cristal. I mean, he did win. He did win the league with them, and obviously, things are a little hot at the federation right now.
Oh my God! Could you imagine Daniel Ahmed? Oh,
El Turco Ahmed coming back to Cristal for a second spell.
I feel like sorry, Christopher. I feel like Cristal fans though would be like, I don't know, considering what happened with the under-20s, and I mean, obviously he won there, so that helps, but I don't know.
Right, and so I mean, so what I'm thinking is that in a way that like being a coach for Cristal, you don't have to like know rocket science because like in a way the team is already very solid. Obviously, there's a lot of gaps that have been. From players that were sold and players that have come in. Cristal has still done a good job, but making sure that the new signings are pieces that will fit well with the already existing framework, I believe. So it's not like you need to be a crazy hardcore Bielcista or something to come coach at Cristal. So those two names are kind of names that have been at Cristal in the past that I can potentially see as someone that could come in last minute. At the same time, I don't think I am against the opinion that it would be very hard to find a coach from abroad. because it was just a month ago that they were looking for a coach abroad. So I'm sure that they already have a portfolio of possible coaches, right? That they were looking at just a month ago, so they could potentially just undust that portfolio and look through and see if there's any particular names. But at least from the local sphere, those are two names that kind of come to mind, really. Other than obviously, well, I'm not even going to mention Reynoso, but yeah.
I thought you were gonna say Girani there. With that face.
No, not
Okay.
either.
Well, anyways, there's three things I wanted to talk about in the last section of the podcast, and that is Peruvians abroad, which we haven't done in a while. So, I think this is definitely a fair time to talk about it because there's a few players that are the two players and one manager. I'm guessing you guys know who the manager is by now, but the two players, we'll talk about them in a second. Mosquera is lined up, and this is kind of a prediction I made about a year ago almost. Mosquera is actually lined up to manage Bolivia, which I think will be an exciting prospect for him. Now, the Bolivian FA is a mess. Okay, so I don't think he'll last. I don't think he'll last very long. And I think the last qualifiers, Bolivia had 4 different managers. I mean, that's more than Argentina, who are also a mess. And Bolivia, I don't think he'll last very long. But if he can coast the Copa America, that will be interesting, especially against Peru, where he will be looking to really try and he'll be really hungry in that match, especially after how they treated him here. So I think that will be a very interesting prospect. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, it's been probably in the works since he went to Bolivia, I think, because the accomplishments he's had there is quite outstanding. I don't think a lot of us really thought that it would end up happening. And, let's be honest, he goes to Royal Paris and gets him into the Sudamericana. Like, I mean, my God, like that's inconceivable to me. Wilstermann, okay, taking them to, what was it, the quarterfinals of the Libertadores, you can maybe see that. But Royal Paris, getting them into the Sudamericana was huge. Obviously, I mean, we could honestly talk for hours about the mess within that federation, but why not? They don't, I think, have another coach who I think would kind of compare with his resume and whatnot. And certainly within the country, he knows Bolivian football, so that's a huge plus. I say, why not?
Christopher, what do you think?
Well, I think that would be very, very, very good for him if if he gets appointed to be Bolivia's national coach. It's been more than a decade since we last saw a Peruvian coach in the Copa America. I mean, the last Peruvian coach in the Copa America, if I'm not mistaken, was 2007. I can't quite remember if it was Uribe.
It was Uribe, I think. I think it was Uribe.
Stepped in.
I'll double check. While you talk.
But also, let's remember that it's very, very rare for Peruvian coaches not only to go abroad, but also to lead a national team. And even if it's Bolivia, I think that's still pretty significant. And I think that he actually has the skills. And for some reason, we treat him badly. We treat him kind of like as a joke in Peru, which is kind of sad when he's really one of the few coaches that we have abroad that has really made a name for himself abroad. Yeah. Even if it's Bolivia, it's still meaningful. And so, yeah, I think that he's doing really good things in Bolivia, and I think that he could have a decent coaching strategy and could probably give us some fair competition if we found him at the Copa America.
All right, so just to confirm, the manager is Julio Cesar Uribe. I still don't think he's a good manager, even if he beat Uruguay 3-0 in that tournament. But I still think he's a good manager. But I still think he's not going to go for him in the end. But anyways, another 2 players I want to talk about. One player and then one team, I guess you could say. Santa Maria and Monarcas. Now, the Monarcas players are going to kind of just copy together. Flores kind of speaks for himself. I mean, Peter's been praising him on Twitter, and rightly so, from what I've seen. But the one I wanted to bring up is Irvin Avila. I personally think he deserves another chance at Monarcas because, I mean, I don't think he's a great player. Okay, I don't think he's any more than an Atlas player, a Veracruz or a Lobos player. But for now, he's the least worst of Monarcas' forwards. I mean, he came on the other day very motivated. He came on and literally got an assist within the first minute of being on the pitch. So I don't think he's a great player, but for me, he's better than the garbage that is Sansores and Lescano. So I don't rate those two at all, and I think Avila is definitely the least worst of the three. So yeah, Peter, what do you think? I'll just let Peter go on this because I know Peter knows I'm going to talk a lot more.
Well, the problem with Avila is, at least since he's gone to Mexico, he's kind of been deployed as like a second striker. So if he were to play, he would have to play with a strike partner of some kind, or maybe have Edison Flores cut inside a lot and kind of play off him, or whatever the case. That would be the only reason why he should come in. But in all honesty, though, as you mentioned, when he's come on, he's done well. I mean, obviously set up a goal against Atlas after coming off the bench within seconds. And I think he gets a bit of a bad reputation because you see the lack of goals and you think, oh, he's not a good striker. He is. He just fulfills a certain role. And I think if he plays with the right partner, he can contribute a few goals here and there as well. So, yeah, I mean, I think he should get a chance. The problem is that in the current system, I don't really see where he fits as a starter unless you make pretty significant adjustments.
Well, Monarcas have to try something because this is honestly the worst Monarcas I've seen since before the Ruiz Diaz days. So I think they have to try something new, and I think Avila has to get another chance. Now, Sandoval, on the other hand, I've never rated Sandoval ever, even when he was at Cristal. I've never rated him, but there's one thing that saves him from being in Mexico this whole time, and that is goals, because he has a lot of them. He knows how to score goals, and he even scored one earlier today. So that's the one good thing about Ryan Sandoval. He's always tricking the manager into thinking he's a good player because he scores a goal in a match. Like today, he's probably going to start the next Liga MX match because he scored today. But like he scores, and then the next two matches he's garbage. Like he's very consistent. And even in matches,
I think that's a little bit harsh because I still think that he does play well. I think part of the problem is they expect him, okay, he scores a goal. All right, here's one or two games. You have to play well in these games. And if you do anything less than score, then we're taking you out. And I think that's really unfair because there have been games where he hasn't scored, but he's been really lively. He's opened up space. He's created chances. But I think he's not the kind of Edison Flores type player in that he'll be constantly running and he'll be always tracking back and dropping into midfield. And that can change the perception of a coach. So I think it's a bit harsh if that's what Hernandez thinks when he sees Sandoval, but maybe Sandoval has to adjust.
Well, Sandoval is a goal scorer, and you can always try the Sandoval-Avila strike partnership, or which we haven't really seen yet at Monarcas, which is a shame because Avila and Sandoval really do know each other. Cristal, even at the worst of Cristal's moments in 2017, they complemented each other quite well. So I can't. You really gotta try. You really gotta try and go for that, I think. And and Flores, he speaks for himself. He's a very good player. The problem is he has no one to play around. So like he's creating all these chances for players that aren't putting the back of the net. So yeah. And now we can finish off with Anderson Santamaria, who is quickly becoming one of my favorite Peruvian players. The trend has slowly been going up since the World Cup, since the March friendlies actually. But now I'm realizing what a sensational center back he actually is because I think really playing him as a striker first when he has a Wanako, because yes, he was a striker at one point. He's even scored 13 goals in the season when Leon the Wanako. Then he got converted to a midfielder, I think, and Melgar was transformed to a center back. And I think when he's on form, he's very, very good because he's not only is he defensively solid, but he has one thing that is really hard to find in the center backs these days, and that is technical ability to play it out of the defense. And I think that is something that a lot of center backs really need. They don't need it, but like, for example, I guess an example is David Luiz, who you can't say is a great defender, I don't think. But when he's on form and he has the technical ability. So when he's on form defensively, he is one of the best center backs in the world. Of course, I'm saying when he's on form. So don't get the wrong idea. But I think Santamaria is – I'm not saying Santamaria is one of the best in the world, mind you. But I'm saying that I think that he's a very underrated center back when he's on form because when he's defensively solid, then he's a very technical player. Like he can play it out defense very well. And that's one what's the word? That's one luxury that Peru have in a center back, I think, because that's one. Like Alberto Rodriguez is one of the best center backs we've had ever, but he wasn't as good technically as Santamaria is, or Reynoso for that matter. So I think that is. I'm really excited to see where he goes from here. I don't think he'll ever go to Europe, to be honest. I think he's kind of past that because of his age, but I think that he's definitely one player who can end up at a big club in the Americas.
Well, okay. So I have really one big issue with Santa Maria. And I have noticed this since he left for Mexico. And I understand that he's been converted to a center back. The one problem with him is he will always commit some weird technical mistake in that he doesn't jockey the attacker in front of him. He will maybe lunge a little bit too early, or he'll give a lot of space to the oncoming runner and therefore gives him the time and the space as well to be able to play in a good cross or to have a shot. Dominant in the air, absolutely. Very good ball playing center back, absolutely. The caveat I will say to all of this is he's also playing as a right-sided center back, which he is not normally used to. And the fact that he has played well for 3 or 4 games in a row is pretty impressive for that reason. The key, though, is he has to do this consistently. He did very well from the end of January last year until maybe around the March friendlies in 2018. Yes. And then it sort of tailed off after that. And then we know what happened with his fitness issues at Puebla. Comes to Atlas, doesn't have a great start. That, to me, is the key for him because he's 27 now. And, you know, in a couple years, he's going to hit his peak as a defender. You hope that by then he is consistent and he's a rock and you know exactly what you're getting, because at this point, and this is a bit of a problem, you still don't always know, is he going to be absolutely sublime or is he going to make us worry a little bit, at least at the club level. With Peru, he's actually been quite solid. So I think with the national team, the fans don't have to worry. But if you're watching him as an Atlas fan, that's your one concern.
Well, yes, he isn't consistent. That's the one thing I've noticed as well. But I think when he's on form, he's sensational. He's one of my favorite Peruvian players in recent times, personally. So, anyways, we're running out of time. So I'm gonna pass on this for this one because I'm not sure. I didn't ask if you watched the Liga MX game beforehand, anyway. So, if you do have something to say, you could say it once I'll give you a Twitter handle. But yeah, that's about it for this podcast. My name is Brian Birdie, and I'm B_Bertie on Twitter. Christopher, what is yours?
My name is Christopher Viscardo, and my Twitter is VIZ_FC.
And Peter, what is yours?
Yes, you can follow me at GalindoPW. You can follow the Peruvian Waltz at Peru Waltz. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, subscribe everywhere. So, yeah. That's about it. And this is the Peruvian Waltz team, and we're signing off. Au revoir.